Hey everybody, I'm Joel D, and the place to be. The place to be today is the state capitol. Once a year, we get ready for this. The governor has the big budget. It's a big number this year. How you get to that, how it be negotiated, the likelihood of it happening, that's what makes all of this interesting. And that's why we're covering this from all the angles. Let's bring in our reporters on this, people that have been following this all day long. We have Lily Sexton hitting the angle. That's going to be a future look for this and talk about data centers and how they regulate those. Andrew Klein's along for the ride. He's handling the Republican response to this. And Tyler Jeske is our man on the street here. He is checking things out, part of our Investigates team, and he's been breaking this down as well. All right, guys, let's start with this. The big number is the headline here. We know it's a starting point. Last year, it started at a certain number and it went down from there. But $53.2 billion, 5% more. Tyler, do you think they get there, or how close?
I don't see how close. I don't see any way that they can get that close to it, Jordy. I think probably ends up being around maybe 52-ish, probably maybe 51, 52-ish. We'll see though. They weren't talking too many numbers today in terms of the Republican response and all that. But there's a lot. I mean, we've got this big old budget brief
There it is.
I mean, it was 40 pages long.
Small type.
They continue to get bigger each year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me get to Andrew here. So let's just start on the number. The response from the Republicans. What are they saying about the big number?
Yeah, I mean, plain and simple, Joel. They don't like it. Say it's way too much. I think this is something kind of expected from Republicans. But yeah, it was really the first point they made was this is too much money. This is not an amount of money that we have. He also says, Democrats are claiming much higher numbers in terms of revenue that the state is not seeing. They're saying, they're underestimating the costs so as well of everything that's going into the budget.
They say on this track, it would be raising taxes next year. That's how bad it would be in terms of eating up the rainy day fund. One more thing, we'll get to Lily in a second here, but I want to get back to Tyler on the rainy day fund part of this. The rainy day fund's meant for what kind of things traditionally? Because I've been trying to explain this to people. You'd think pandemic stuff, stuff that's out of the ordinary that you wouldn't expect. Now it's being looked at as a possible funding source.
So it's supposed to be used for exactly what you would think it would be, an emergency. You are in a spot where I am running out of money and we need to use this to get through. Or at least that's how Republicans have said it should be used for years. Right. Democrats are now saying, the governor is now saying that we've had this money, we've built it up for several years now. Why don't we give it back to the Pennsylvanians?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what they're looking at now. We're looking at $4.5 billion out of the rainy day fund this year to cover that $53.2 billion.
Right. All right. And part of that is getting ready for the future. And let's bring in Lily Sexton for that. Data centers, we know they've already have some in Pennsylvania, but they're talking about what would happen in the future, regulating them and how things would operate, because it does seem like the future is data centers at some level. What did you hear in the budget today?
Right. And Shapiro said that he really wanted Pennsylvania to be a leader, at least in the United States, in terms of housing these data centers. But he also said that he wants that innovation to also have accountability. And if the data centers want support here in the state, they're going to have to make sure that they are working with the communities here.
What about in terms of how they would function? Because it takes a lot of energy to be able to have data centers.
Right. So one of the big concerns people have been having is that these data centers are going to make energy more expensive. They're going to end up paying the price. So Shapiro said that data centers have to be able to produce or pay for the energy that they are using here in PA.
Interesting. We'll see if they can get to that, because I know it seems like way off in the future, but it's happening now and it's happening fast. Andrew, back to you for this. Give me the demeanor. Does it sound like they're willing to negotiate? Because the Republicans, they're happy that the governor has reached out earlier than normal, so they're trying to escape last year's delay that went into November.
To me, Joel D, it sounds like they're willing to negotiate, but it sounds like that is because it's their job. It's not something that they really want to do. Is kind of the thing that I got. It wasn't you could tell that the Republicans earlier today were not happy. They were not happy with the budget. They were not happy with a number of things in the budget. But again, they, I think, understand we are in government. We're going to have to work with everybody. But it definitely did not sound like it was something they're going to be excited to do moving forward, especially with the number that we're starting at, because they were, playing again. The first thing they said was, "We're not happy with this. This number is way too high. It's way more money than we can really put into a budget."
Yeah. All right, Tyler. Let's
Joel
sum
D,
this up. Yeah.
Joel D, can I add to that? But because I spoke with, and I was part of the press conference with House and Senate Democrats, and they kind of echoed that same thing of, we're going to need to get together sooner this year rather than later. We need to talk this over. We're ready to start working on this tomorrow, not waiting for budget hearings like we have in years past. So they kind of said the same thing in terms of, we need to get talking sooner.
And they literally are meeting tomorrow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But whether they get to a final number that makes everyone happy, that's the question.
All right, I'm going to have you flip through some things there. Get that budget in front of you. I'm just going to toss some things out. Everybody can join in here. Other things you heard that's in the budget. The energy, they want to bring those numbers down. We know that has been rough lately. The $500 million in more education spending, a lot of that came from the settlement, I guess the decision from the court saying that the funding guidelines were off in Pennsylvania, so they have to keep increasing that every year. What else do you guys have that we can kind of like shotgun this and throw out a bunch of things here, people?
Two things, Joel Dave, that caught my attention. The quote federal response fund that the governor wants to put out it's a $100 million, essentially a slush fund, saying that we need to have this money. We need to have this money in case the federal government does something like it did with SNAP again.
It almost feels like that it's this money set aside because there's been 19 lawsuits against the Trump administration from Shapiro. He says he's won them all. They've been valid. They've been important for Pennsylvania. But putting money aside to handle those things in the future seems very proactive and seems like they're ready for more. Anything else caught your attention, Lily?
Shapiro also addressed how data centers have to make sure that they're respecting the communities they come in terms of environmentalism. And he said that if they want any kind of cooperation with the state, they have to make sure that they are keeping the land safe. And in terms of like water supply, they're also considering that. So I think it addressed a lot of the concerns that people were having with these potential data centers moving in.
Okay. And then Andrew, anything else from you?
Yeah, I mean, one of the other big things was minimum wage. Raising minimum wage was something that the governor brought up. He said raising minimum wage to $15 could lead to $300 million in revenue that comes back to the state for Medicaid, because people would have more money in their pockets, wouldn't be able to just afford Medicaid. So that was an interesting thing. The Republicans, when that was discussed, they said it kind of doesn't really matter. $7.25, $15 an hour. Doesn't really matter. It's not enough anyway. So he said the goal was to bring wages up to maximum wages rather than dealing with the minimum.
Yeah, I'll add something to that. I had a different lawmaker come over to me and say, some of those people they're talking about raising out of the level of Medicaid. So once again, to explain a little more what you said, they're saying if they can bring people up to a certain salary level, they wouldn't qualify for Medicaid anymore. Thus, the state wouldn't have to kick into that, and that would save money in the long run. So it's like, if they make more, we don't have to pay more. But the lawmaker I talked to said, well, hold on a second. Some of those people that are counting in that big, large number are like teenagers. So they wouldn't be eligible for Medicaid anyway. So we're not keeping them out of Medicaid. Thus, we're not getting those savings. So, the devil's in the details in some of those things.
Joel D, one more thing I want to add. The governor kind of shifting a little bit for the first time, calling for the House and Senate to pass a cell phone ban in schools.
Yeah.
Which is odd for anyone who's followed PA for a while. Usually they let the schools kind of do this thing on their own. And anytime a statewide thing like this gets discussed.
Well, remember, we did this story before. Who was it? Ryan Almond had put this in place where the money was there in case the schools wanted to do it. They would have these bags. They would be locked up. Then they could, get rid of them later in the day. So the money was there. If the schools wanted to do it, like you're right, school choice and individual, local control is something that's very important in Pennsylvania. So to go above that and say this is too big for mental health and for other reasons, we need to just ban these, I think is pretty aggressive. But I think we've learned something in the last few years and how mental health has been affected by cell phones and social media. And they want to kind of make this easier on the school districts for once. Instead of having this be 500 different arguments, it could just be one decision there. It could be interesting. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thanks a lot for your time here. We're going to have much more at 5 and 6. We'll let you get ready for those live shots. A big budget, some big ideas. We'll see if there's a big compromise in play as well. I'm Joel D. Smith. We'll see you next time.